Hi, I welcome you all for my Java 8 series of videos. In our earlier video, we saw the anonymous inner class demonstration 1. In this video, we are going to see the demonstration 2 of anonymous inner class. This will be the last demo that I'll be showing on anonymous inner class. If you people are aware of the anonymous inner class well in detail, you can skip this video and you can move forward to the next video in the series. Let me take you to the demonstration right away. Now, here I'm going to consider an inbuilt interface called Runnable. In our earlier video, we discussed about the custom interface called Flyer. But in this video, I'm going to demonstrate through an inbuilt interface called Runnable. This implementation is towards the threaded concept. In Java, we have threads. You can implement thread via Runnable interface, or you can extend via thread class. So I'm going to take that as a consideration for understanding the anonymous inner class. So let's quickly go ahead and define a specific class called music, and this class is going to implement the interface called Runnable, which is more similar like your class called bird behavior in our earlier video, which implements the Flyer interface. The same way here, we use a class called music, and that music class implements the Runnable interface. Now what we need to override inside this music class from the Runnable interface is none other than your run method. Now we have a class and implementing the predefined interface called Runnable, and we have overridden the run method. Now inside this run method, we can define some statements saying music played, a simple statement, and this run method will be invoked on top of executing your thread. So coming to your main method, the entry level method, I'm going to create a thread object, thread t1 equals new thread of, and this thread is going to execute the code of your music snippet, and for that we need to create the music object, which is a threaded object because it implements the Runnable interface. So you can create an object for the music and forward that music object into the thread object, and you can start the thread by using t1.start. So this is the basic steps that we use to follow in order to implement a thread in our application. So we created a class called music, we implemented the Runnable interface, we overridden the abstract method of the Runnable interface called run method, and we defined some statement like music played, and we are integrating that music object into the thread object and starting the thread. Now we have to see how the output is going to be. Now in our earlier video, we simulated a similar concept there as well, but that was completely on a custom defined interface called Flyer, but here it's all about the predefined interface called Runnable. So let's execute this and see how the code is going to be. Now you can see the music played output is there, and this confirms that your run method got executed on top of starting the thread. Now again, coming to the point, this external class called music can be integrated into your main method itself with the help of anonymous class. Instead of having a class called bird behavior, we converted that bird behavior class to an anonymous class. Now the class name is music, which is well aware that the class name is music, and this music class, if you look at this name, this becomes the name of the class. This particular name represents the class which implements a Runnable interface. So you can create an object explicitly with the help of this name called music. So here I have instantiated the music object and stored in the variable called M, right? Now the idea here is, what if in case I don't have a name for this class? For example, I don't have a name in here called music. So assume that there is no name called music. Now what's going to happen? How do you invoke this class? Obviously you can't create an instance for this class because you don't know what's the name for it. Such implementations are called as anonymous implementation. Technically speaking, there is no name for the anonymous class. If there is no name for the anonymous class, then the class which is implementing a runnable interface have to override the run method. So this snippet of code will all be more of same, but the only thing is you will not carry a name in it. So when it comes to the implementation of anonymous class, you have to make a note that there is no name for the class, but you will implement the interface or an abstract class. Either one is fine. If it's an abstract class, you can extend an abstract class. If it's an interface, you can implement an interface, which is happening internally to it. Now we are talking only from the perspective of an interface. So how do we interpret this named class to an anonymous class? So we need to convert this named class to an anonymous class. Anonymous class, right? So how do we do that? We'll follow the same principle of what we did in our earlier video here as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and comment the music class. So here we are going to comment out the music class. But how do we ensure that we use the run method? So obviously you end up with an error here because we don't have the music class anymore. So we comment out this as well, or we remove this statement. Now what we can do here is, we can keep in mind that the music class was actually implementing a runnable interface. So I go ahead and use the interface called runnable again here, which is more similar like a flyer in our earlier video. And there I used a variable name called f, and here I'm using a variable name called r equals. You need to instantiate this interface, but technically speaking, you cannot instantiate an interface, but this snippet of code is actually resembling the representation of your anonymous class. So this becomes your representation of anonymous class. So we need to create a boundary for this class. So how do we create a boundary for this class? By using open and close curly braces. So let's go ahead and do that as well. As I said in the earlier video also, that your anonymous class representation have to be terminated with semicolon, and internally to it you have to override the run method of the runnable interface. Now it's raising an error here because the type new runnable must implement the inherited abstract method called run method. So we haven't overridden that method, which we need to do it. So I've overridden this run method, and inside this run method we can print out a statement saying music played anonymously, right? So now we got a similar structure of your music class, wherein the music class we have a name for the class and we formally implement them and then override. But here it's like informal way of writing your class code, but that's more inner to a class, and it is anonymous in nature, so that we call it as an anonymous inner class. So always the anonymous inner class will be represented with the help of a new keyword followed with the name of the class or name of the interface or name of an abstract class. So you can create an anonymous class with the help of name of a class, or you can use name of the interface, or you can use the name of the abstract class. Now once this setup is done, we have to throw the R into your thread object. The thread constructor will take the parameter of your R variable, because that R variable represents what? The R variable is actually representing your anonymous class. So this is your anonymous class. What you're seeing here, starting from here till here, is what is your anonymous class code is. The whole anonymous class gets instantiated and referred by the variable called R. Now this R variable is what we need to forward it to your thread object, the thread constructor. Before, what object we passed? Music object M. At the time you had a name for the class, so you manually instantiated it, but this time you represent the anonymous class code. Internally to it, the instantiation happens for it, and it's served in the variable called R, and that R is the one which you need to refer it here in the thread constructor instead of M. That's all we have to do right now. Now we can go ahead and execute the code. Now what happens? Music played anonymously. You get that output. So this is again similar to what we discussed in our earlier video, but the only difference is we are using an inbuilt interface called Runnable. Runnable is used to create your thread code, and that's what I'm doing, and it's an interface again. So with the help of this interface, we are able to generate an anonymous class and represent the anonymous class object into your thread constructor and start your thread. You get the execution. Thank you.